Oh. All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Our presenter today is Ernesto Cuba. So Ernesto is a PhD candidate in Hispanic linguistics at the Graduate Center. He obtained his BA in linguistics and diploma in gender studies at the Pontificia Universidad Católica del Peru. His area of interest is language, gender, and sexuality studies. The subject of his doctoral research is the discursive and linguistic practices of Feminas, a transgender activist group based in Lima, Peru. Ernesto has published book chapters, guidelines, and essays on gender and language in Spanish. He is the co-founder of Indisciplinares, an international community of feminist linguistics. And his talk today is titled, "To You, What Does It Mean to Talk Like a Woman? Ideologies of Gendered Language Among Transgender Women in the City of Lima, Peru." So without further ado, let's hand it over to Ernesto.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. Can I see the PowerPoint now? Yeah. So, well, thank you for organizing this, Ira, and all the teams. So, we're going to start in a moment, talking about, first about the community I work with for my dissertation. This is a preliminary finding, so this is a work in progress. So I didn't, arrive to conclusion yet, but I want to present some of the aspects of part of my dissertation. So, can you see first? It's getting slow, sorry. So while entering to the first slide, I'm going to read a little bit about, description of feminas and what's the deal with LGBT rights in Peru. So in Peru, the recognition of rights for LGBT people is almost non-existent. In comparison to other countries in Latin America, Peru is lagging behind with respect to anti-discrimination laws that include sexual orientation and gender identity. Nor does it have legal rights for same-sex couples, such as marriage, civil unions, and adoption. With the LGBT population living in Peru, transgender individuals, people who move away from the gender they were assigned at birth, constitute the most disenfranchised group of all. Since the government does not legally recognize changes in their gender identity and they are unable to legally change their names, this poses unsurmountable barriers to their access to the most basic services, including formal education, employment, and public safety. Furthermore, transgender people face more social prejudice and limitations than gay men, lesbians, and bisexual people in Peru. And specifically, transgender women experience more discrimination and tougher living conditions than transgender men. In spite of all these structural adversities, Peruvian transgender women have been organizing around diverse grassroots organizations since the 1980s. My dissertation, Women Speaking Out, Public Discourses and Life Narrative of Transgender Activists in Peru, will examine the public discourses and personal narrative of an activist group of transgender women called Feminas. That is women, like in a kind of old Spanish, right? Whose aims are building community-based politics of solidarity among trans women, providing reliable information and guidance in relation to trans-specific health and human rights issues, denouncing discriminatory practices from the media, public institutions, and civil constituencies, as well as advocating for structural legal reforms in Peru. In 2015, Leila Huerta, a transgender social worker, founded Feminas in response to the above-mentioned virtual absence of rights for transgender people in Peru, and the urgent need to create a safe place for transgender women fighting for social change. Next slide, please. It's just the name. Okay. Initially, the group, that's correct. That's fine. Initially, the group focused on reaching transgender women looking for professional health information related to gender transition procedures. So Femina was founded in 2015 as part of a campaign of a program to provide hormones for transgender women starting their transition. Okay. Over the years, Feminas has diversified its activities and built alliances with other LGBT Peruvian LGBT organizations, and governmental offices to implement projects that
sorry, I
aim to
didn't do
immediately alleviate the diverse conditions that many trans women endure, such as police brutality, being denied entry in public hospitals, etc., as well as to lobby for trans-specific legislation in Peru. So in the left, you can see an old picture of Feminas in its old, well, in its old building in another neighborhood in Lima. And I've never been there because when I started meeting Feminas, they use another place for the meetings. When I started meeting Feminas was in the late December 2019. So they use a space of a left-wing party called Nuevo Peru, and they use well, the party let them use some of their rooms, etc. So, due to its community-based work, active networking with other activists and the government, and its strong social media presence, Feminas has gained a reputation in the Peruvian LGBT movement as one of the leading transgender organizations in the country. In this sense, I hypothesize that the public discourses disseminated through online and offline platforms, as well as the gender ideologies held by members of Feminas, are influencing how fellow activist transgender women, as well as non-activist transgender women of Peru, at least in Lima, understand the nature and scope of transgender politics. Furthermore, in my fieldwork, I noticed that Feminas function as a prototypical community of practice, the concept of Eker-McConaughey net. Since its members, besides self-identifying as transgender women, work together for a shared negotiated purpose, in this case, advocated for transgender rights. As a result of their constant collective work and their close social ties, the participants of Feminas also share a semiotic repertoire. For instance, a so-called slang, a certain type of humor. We're going to that in a while, which is also the distinctive aspect of any community of practice, the communicative repertoire. In this sense, I'm interested in observing both the adoption and divergence in the use of gendered linguistic resources among members of Feminas who have varied degrees of involvement in trans activism. Also, I plan to explore the metalinguistic belief held by members of Feminas that cause them to validate or discard such gender linguistic practices among themselves. So this is, as I said, just a subset of the findings of my work. Yeah, so this is Feminas as I know now. So this is the community center in Pueblo Libre, which is a middle-class neighborhood, kind of close to mine, Lince. So my fieldwork was there. I don't know, people think on fieldwork like in the forest or like tiny communities, but for me it was taking an Uber like 10 minutes distance. Like, okay, meeting is at 10:30, so I'm taking my Uber at 10:15, right? So yeah, this is, back then, well, it was a new community center. They also changed their whole image online and also their logo. Now the slogan is Cambiando Vidas, Changing Lives, referring also to the guidance through gender transition. Well, this is a photo of March 29, a friend of mine, Mia, organizing a campaign. Next, please. It's slow. So, oh, okay. So these are some pictures to give you an idea of what's going on with Feminas. As I said, it's the kind of the most popular, but also the most influential transgender activist group in Lima, in general in Peru. So this is the work of Feminas on lobbying for the change in the feature of the space of sex in the ID. So in Peru, we have like an ID, and you have your names, your surname, and also sex. So this is Dania Calderon. She's one of the founders of Feminas. And it was an amazing day because this was in front of the office that validates the identity of Peruvians, right? So well, Dania and her lawyer and a bunch of people behind made possible to change the sign or the mark of sex from male to female without proving any kind of genital resignation proof to the court, etc. So it was the first time in history in Peru that something like that happened. And Femina was part of that change. So with no surgery involved. There was after that, there was a conference, I attended that, and it was an important moment. So this happened last year around this day. Next, please. Also, there are community activities like International Trans Day of Remembrance. So in the right, you can see many of the activists of Feminas holding signs of the name of the son of trans women who passed away recently. Some of them were murdered or their life were so disenfranchised that they live in very poor conditions. So the expectancy of life is 35 years of transgender women in Latin America. So yeah, that happened also in November. All these images are not private. They are in the Facebook page of Femina, so I'm not infringing any privacy issues at all. Next, please. Okay, so this is to see how the community I work with look like, sound like. So here are two transgender activists. One of them belongs to Feminas. So they bring in here a definition of what a transgender person is, transgénero. So I won't bring translation because I want to challenge you to understand what it's saying in Spanish, that it's kind of the same definition that is shared in American society. You can play, please.
Primero lo primero, ¿quiénes somos las personas trans?
Las personas trans son aquellas cuya identidad o expresión de género, es decir, cómo se sienten internamente y cómo expresan externamente su género, no coinciden con lo que se les fue asignado al nacer.
Así tenemos, por ejemplo, a las mujeres trans, que son aquellas que al momento de nacer fueron asignadas con el género masculino, pero cuya identidad o expresión de género es femenina.
Okay, so thank you. So we want to explore the definition that they, support and they mobilize for the politics, but also what transgender theory, trans studies, work with. So next, please.
Primero lo primero, ¿quiénes somos las personas trans?
Las personas trans son aquellas.
Okay, so this is my as I said, okay, you can take a look. And there is somebody in the video that you may be familiar with.
If ever I had a video, would you dance in it? Would you dance in there? Oh, sunshine, you are my sunshine. Let it in, let it in. Oh, sunshine, you are my sunshine. Let it in, let it in.
Okay, yeah, I was there. So as I said, my fieldwork was in a urban environment in the community center of Feminas, and it spanned, from December 2019 with, the pause of the lockdown, global lockdown, until June 2022. So again, this is material that is public in the Facebook page of Feminas. So in this video, I didn't know the existence of these videos until last night, and I realized I was there. So basically, my participation was, sitting in the corner, trying not to talk very much at the beginning, at least the first month, and then later I started talking a bit more. So while I attend these these semi-public weekly meetings, I carry out interviews, semi-structured interviews. I'm going to talk a bit that in a moment. So in the right, you can see the caption of the video. I don't remember clearly this moment, but in that meeting, the attendants supposed to be talking about there are about the that there's ways to embrace femininity, to express feminine gender identity, etc. So yeah, next please. So the pool of participants, I designed at the first moment to get the most diverse pool of participants possible, and one of the criterion, one of my main focus was to keep the axis of political interest and involvement in activism clearly. So in the core is the 6 or 5 members of Feminas who organize most of the events and activities, etc. The close members are people who constantly go to the weekly meetings. And they are not necessarily involved in the activities, but they share time together. They use the same words. They share the same kind of humor. They hang out in other places, going to the same parties. They gossip about the same people. Friends are like okay, they are familiar with Feminas, but they are come from time to time, like I don't know, maybe once a month, or they are they are familiar with the word of Feminas, but they are not that. They not come by very much to the community center. So non-activist people that I interviewed were people who were their first time in it was their first time in the community center, or they were just starting their transition, gender transition. So I had the opportunity to meet people who were, the very first day I meet this person. It was the first time this person meet another transgender woman in her life. So that was very interesting, to say the least. So I carry out semi-structured interviews with 28 activists and non-activist transgender women in Lima, with a duration of 60 through 90, sometimes 120 minutes each. There are different levels of involvement with the organization and politics. I try to catch a broad diversity in terms of age, socioeconomic status, profession, and socialization with other trans women. So yeah, I work with people who are trans hairdressers, who work as in IT, services, as journalists, etc. And all participants were financially compensated for their time. Of course, I have to pay them for their time and support. I also support the group in all the different ways. Next, please. So we're reaching to this. Okay, so I made new friends. Nuevas amigas. I really like these two pictures because this was last Christmas, and I with Mia. And this is the last day before moving back to New York City. This happened like 14 days ago. Yeah, I made very close, dear friends among my participants. So now they're my friends. Somos amigas. So I with a mask of Feminas. I'm wearing the mask of Feminas. Yeah, we were talking, we were drinking some coffee there. It was cold 2 weeks ago in Lima. It is. Okay. Okay, back to business. So the corpus is comprised by interviews made to 28 people. sometimes 2 recordings for the same interview because there was an interruption, like, oh, I have to go to the doctor. I just remembered this. Or like something happened, like, oh, you know, that happened. So that is a total of 2,029 minutes. I don't know if that is impressive. I never read like very much about numbers on interviews. And that is like more than 400,000 words transcribed. So yeah, that's the corpus. Without some people, for instance, some of the interviews, one of them was in English. So it's a particular profile of somebody who has not like a typical person living in Lima, right? So, and also I didn't include here all the allies of feminists. They were doctors, they were lawyers, because they helped me to understand very much the situation of the population, but also the activism. So this is transgender women from as young as 23-year-old, as old as 65-year-old, people who, you know, started transition like some days before the interview, or people started the transition like when they were 60-year-old. Yeah, so in their 60s. So yeah, I don't know how to get to any conclusion because they are so diverse that it's for me difficult to, you know, to grasp any. So for this case, in this presentation, I decided to go more like for thematic areas instead of like, okay, I'm going to, you know, group my findings for level of involvement in politics or, you know, age or profession. So next, please. So this is the applied questionnaire that I use. This is the questionnaire I use. So these are 6 topics, and there are the number of questions for each area is in parentheses. For language, I asked 6 questions, but I won't talk about the 6 questions. I only talk about 2 of them. So even being 2 questions is a lot of information. It's 47 hours. Okay, so it's very transparent. I don't have to explain this, so let's go. So for language matters, I made 2 questions. The first, to you, what does it mean to talk like a woman? So I asked these questions kind of out of the blue. Para ti, ¿cómo habla una mujer o cómo suena una mujer? Because I wanted to catch the very first thought or attitude towards this topic. Because I also had the opportunity to listen to them in the meetings, so I kind of grasp, you know, the gender ideologies, you know, that they have, that they share. And soon after these, like, there are like 5 or 6 questions in between, or 4, I'm not sure. No, sorry, I correct myself. So to you, what does it mean to be talk like a lady? And then immediately after, I asked them, what aspect of speech did you consciously change as you began your transition? So, okay, you're saying, that's my plan was this, okay, you're saying like women talk or should talk in this way. So how you deal with that issue or this, you know, aspect of your social presentation? How do you deal? Okay, so any kind of, all kind of answer, I got all kind of answers, but I wanna focus on those ones that are more related with linguistic features and some gender norms. Next, please. So before going into the data, again, this is a work in progress. So next, please. So this is some theoretical, some of the theoretical framework that I use for my dissertation. The very first one is the concept of transgender, or what is a transgender person. So this is a very famous and well-renowned trans scholar, Susan Stryker. So I won't read all of it, but basically what she's saying is that a transgender person is somebody who moved away from the imposed boundary I'm going to read it. I prefer to read it. Okay. So people who move away from the gender, so the transgender person is somebody who moved away from the gender they were assigned at birth. People who cross or trans the boundaries constructed to their culture to define and contain that gender. So this is the part I want to emphasize because this, I think this is what is happening in Peruvian, in the community I study, where I work in. Some people move away from their birth assigned gender because they feel strongly that they properly belong to another gender, through which it would be better for them to live. So there is like some direction in that, moving away from the gender assigned at birth. So there are other people who are looking for some new locations on a space not yet clearly described or completely occupied. So this is more related with non-binary gender identities. And finally, still others simply feel the need to challenge the conventional expectation bound up with the gender that was initially put upon them. So this is more like gender bending, or more gender queer identities. In any case, it is the movement across a socially imposed boundary away from an unchosen starting place, rather than any particular destination or mode of transition. So I have to make some distance from that because not necessarily the case of the community I studied. I think there is, some direction of the movement towards some understanding of femininity. So it's not just a displacement, but also going to a certain point that best characterizes the concept of transgender that I developed here. So amazing book, you should read it. Thank you. Next. So what else? I also employ the concept of women's language. It's kind of transparent at the beginning, the phrase women's language, but there are layers of complexity here. So this is a famous book of Miyako. I don't know if I'm pronouncing well, but I all the time say Miyako Inoue. Is that correct? Okay, so the thing is that Miyako tries to overcome the difference between, what people believe about gender use, language use, and what people actually are doing with language. Okay, so she's saying, she defines women's language in this way. It's a set of linguistic beliefs about forms and functions of language used by and associated with women. To put it differently, it is a culturally sounding category and knowledge about how women speak, how they usually speak or should speak. So the norm and the practice is very, gender norm and practice are kind of diluted or like they have fuzzy boundaries in this case. The production of such knowledge takes a wide variety of a range of forms, including commentaries and statements such as women speak more politely than men, or less logically, or to say the same thing as men, women use such and such a final particle. So she also is very, she also comments that linguists also are part of this, reification of women's language, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. Next, please. So more like abstract terms, she said, I pursue a different direction and seek to understand women's language and network of cultural practices objectifying femaleness, femininity, and mapping a verified gender binary into the sounds, figures, manners, and organization of talk. So the thing is that my project is a bit different from this because it's not necessarily somebody else talking about the speech of women or how women should talk, but by individuals who are entering a second language socialization, So I think, so myself, I'm gonna put myself as an example. So I was raised as a boy, and then I was a male teenager, and if I would decide to transition to a feminine identity, I have to change an ample set a communicative repertoire, like my own name, the forms, think on grammatical gender in Spanish, and the way I speak, my pitch, etc., etc. So I have to get re-socialized by myself if I don't have friends or like somebody working as a guide for me. But I would enter also to a group of people also dealing with a transition, Or, yeah, so in this case, it's not very much about what other people say about women, but how they conceptualize the concept of women's language or what women supposed to sound and how they deal with that in their own repertoires. Should they like include that in their own repertoires? How do they deal with that? So it's quite different from, you know, the kind of data that Media Queen has in this case. Okay, next, please. So a classic. I'm laughing because many of the discussion of gender and language start with this book. It's a very influential book of the 70s by Robin Taylor Lakoff. This may be kind of cases where I'm in good time, right? Okay, where this is a book about the gender ideologies of how women speak. So there is a list of 10 items. I won't enter in detail here, but I only highlight that. Of course, she was talking in that moment about their own social circle, like middle class, white women, educated in the United States, monolingual, most of them, or maybe all of them. So this book is highly influential for further studies on general language. I just want to highlight that I want to talk about this later. Maybe number 6, hypercorrect grammar, and maybe something like number 3, but more talking about pitch and intonation. But what I'm saying is this list doesn't apply to feminists. This is not working for the cultural setting where I work. And number 8, women don't tell jokes. I mean, well, it was so funny. I mean, for me, because I mean, the humor in the community I study is everywhere. I mean, the most fun I get in my doctorate was in feminist doing field work. So, and we have to be, you know, cautious about using these concepts. But also, I want to bring because, you know, my first step in presenting the findings are more related about presenting what feature people has in their mind when talking about women's language. Next, please. Okay, so genderless. A bunch of letters, sorry. How long? 15 minutes, right? Like
We started about 10 minutes late, so I think.
Okay. Okay, so yeah. Do you have water? I'm getting first. Please. Okay, so genderless start like a concept in the 70s, basically following other legs, like social legs or what other legs are? Like social legs.
Yeah.
Dialect, yeah, sorry. Exnolect. And so it was proposed originally as a very discrete set of features, linguistic features that are, you know, mostly found between women and between men. So this is a kind of more sophisticated way of talking about women's language, but it's the gender, like feminine gender. What I like about this paper, Can the Term Genderless Be Safe, of Heiko Moschenbacher, is that he tried to rescue this concept from a postmodern perspective. Like, okay, we won't have to think that there's only actually like there's a set of linguistic features that only men can produce and women not. I'm gonna read this in a moment. So he's saying, genderless accordingly are not indexes or symptoms of pre-existing gender identities, which is a very postmodern move here. They rather cite different reference points that have over time been materialized in the performative connection to gender. Gender, therefore, provide resources for gender identity performances, which can be exploited strategically or used as form of ritualized practice. In other words, he highlights the ideological nature of genderless, like a set of shared belief of, about how women and men can use. Think, for example, the famous work of Kira Hall on the sex phone workers. Well, sex phone workers, I think, don't exist anymore because everything is online now and there's videos. But back in the time, in the 90s or 80s, or even for that, you can like call the hotline. I don't know if that's the term, sex line. And somebody else in the other side will start like talking in a sexy way, performing an ethnic or ethnic/sexualized identity of your own taste. You create a fantasy and whatever happened. So the cues to get to, this impersonation of femininity is only provided by linguistic features, right? So, and to get access to that, somebody can access that because they share some of they are familiar with, the feature that index femininity, sexiness, sex appeal, etc. So Heiko is more like that. He's saying, okay, gender doesn't exist like in material, definitive way, but there is a lot of belief about how women and men talk. Next, I think I've been very clear with this. So I really like this part because they talk about passing. Passing is a very important concept in the construction of gender identity by transgender people. So can somebody define what passing means? Maybe.
Well, in the context of transness, passing means if you're, let's say, a trans woman, then passing means that you get people who don't know you're a trans woman to see you as a woman. Yeah. And like the context of gay people passing something kind of different.
Yeah, for instance, passing as a straight man when actually the person has homosexual sexual orientation. Okay, so here Mochenbacher highlights the idea that performances are a mere reflection of person demographic and biological characteristics of his her inner self. So he moved away from this idea of of the concept that gender or like gender patterns of speech is just a reflection of your demographic sex. So he moved away from that. Yeah, he talks about citation and recitation. So that's a very postmodern understanding of gender and language theory. So in conclusion, speakers cannot be said to perform gender because of their existing gender identities. Rather, gender identities are reformulated in the very moment of gender-led performance. Yeah, so this is very pivotal for understanding the gender identity construction of all of us, but especially and critically for transgender speakers. Next, please. So now we're moving to the material. Preliminary finding. But I need to show you all, who am I talking about? What are my theoretical framework? Okay, next. So now you have your anybody has an out? Okay, so the translations here are not mine, are from DeepL, but I do like some proofreading that makes some sense. So if there are mistakes, sorry, it's not my fault. Okay, so a recurring feature in and all of them, most of the interviews and these sections of the two questions that I brought to this talk is pitch, like tone, women supposed to have like higher tone pitch and men lower. Other things like there was only one other person bringing another feature, and that was thank you so much, indirectness or hedging, like putting hedges around the discourse to be more indirect. So just one person said that, and that is the list of Robin Lakoff. So this respondent said like, las mujeres adornan mucho, los hombres son más directos. So it's like women used to talk with more, cages or more adornment, and men are more direct. And that was it. The rest of the interviews talk about, pitch, and coursing. So I'm going to talk a bit about pitch in the next slides. Oh. Okay. Can somebody, Horacio, can you read this, please?
Sure, in English or?
No,
Spanish? Okay. Bueno, ahora sobre, en tu opinión, ¿qué rasgos hace que una forma de hablar suene de mujer o femenino? Lo básico es el timbre de voz, el timbre de voz. Como lo dices, yo creo que el saber cómo un expresarse va es un detalle de feminización. Y eso es en torno a lo que es, pues, expresión oral, ¿no? Pero si hablamos corporal, ya es pues cómo tú te comportas, cómo te sientas, tu postura. Y eso es lo que te hace también femenina. Es parte de una feminización. A veces muchos piensan que la feminización solamente es cirugías al rostro y que te operes el cuerpo. Pero ¿de qué te sirve que tengas un rostro operado, un cuerpo operado, si tienes un comportamiento masculino? ¿De qué te sirve que no te sepas expresar? ¿De qué te sirve que no tengas una muy buena comunicación?
Okay, so next. So this is the translation of the software I found online. Okay, so I really like this excerpt of S. S is a contestant of beauty pageants. She's a hairdresser. She's 33. And she's very aware that language is one of the components of a set of stylistic practices. Like she's also aware that there may be, or there must be, an alignment between the feminine pitch and also certain comportment and the way you sit. She may be very aware about this because she was part of this world of beauty and all these beauty pageants. But I kind of I had the feeling that maybe other people could think the same. So she's like basically highlighting that there is not very much sense if you don't align all the stylistic resources that you have towards the shared understanding of femininity in Peruvian society. Next, please. So J. So Jay worked in a call center some years ago. I was very curious about what happened then, because some of the girls I met work in a call center. And as I said, like in the sex from workers, the only key that you can get from somebody, on the other side of the line is language. So maybe, I asked, ¿y tu voz te trajo un problema cuando hacías call center? En esa experiencia que tuviste. And Jay said, no, me decían señorita. So that was the first thing that people said back to her. Pero después tenía que decir mi nombre legal y era como que, entonces, then I have to say my legal name because back then she didn't have, she didn't have her new ID with her social name. So then she has to say like, oh, okay, I'm Ernesto, hello, hi, señorita, hola, señorita, and hi, I'm Ernesto, and there was like some mismatch there that it was very brought to her like this forex feeling, right? So al comenzar tu transición, tú cambiaste conscientemente algo de tu voz o algún aspecto de tu forma de hablar. Did you change something like consciously? Claro, fingía más la voz, and this word is very, very, I found this word a lot of times, fingir, fingida, so now I need some translation help because I think this can be fake or impose. What else can be? I don't know how to, there is a component of faking there, of like, I try hard to be something else that I not naturally am. So they say this by their own, like, claro, fingía más la voz, trataba de hacerlo más, de feminizarla, hacerla más delicada. Bueno, ahora hablo como me da la gana, so I talk as the way I want. I don't get very much, I don't put very much effort on doing this. So this is a kind of common narrative that when starting the transition, many of them are, are very aware of something, with a high pitch, sounding feminine, but then there is a moment, again, many of them get tired and exhausted and they don't do it anymore. So, and they, present this work of just gendering work of presenting the voice as thing here, which is very interesting for me. At least I saw this word many, many times in the transcription. Next. So this is the translation. So miss, anyway, you can see that. Next, please.
I think people say affectation,
Affectation.
like it's kind of faking, like overdoing something. I don't know.
It's like trying to, to perform a British accent. Well, I don't know. So this is the part I want to talk about, the exhausting practice. So this is an example. I really wanted to play some of the other recordings, but I asked one of the leaders and they told me, well, maybe for security reasons, it's better just to bring the description. So that's why I have to like impersonate. Okay, next. So just to recap, so most of the cases, people are just aware about pitch by very concrete linguistic features. In this case, D, who is 45, lived a time in Buenos Aires, Argentina, expressed in a very, for me, funny way, the overall, the whole sentiment about using this high pitch. Al comenzar tu transición, bueno, you know that. Cuando asumí mi identidad, so I'm going to impersonate this, but it was kind of the way it sounds. Cuando asumí mi identidad, a saludar suavemente. Hola, ¿cómo estás? Buenos días. So she did it like a very thin voice. Disculpe, tiene un... Dios mío. A veces tenía que estar como que en este personaje impostando la voz de esa manera. Era como que cansa entonces. Pero en Argentina, la gente, so I've been in Argentina, so I can say that is kind of true. Las chicas no impostan la voz ni nada, pues hablan más normal. Si tiene la voz ronca, ay, che, contame. ¿Cómo te ha ido, ah? Ay, boluda, si sabes. Entonces, no tienen que estar impostando la voz. Impostar, fingir. So this is kind of the indexical feel of how they, portray this this practice, temporary practice. And next, you can see the translation. So she's talking here like there was a point where after that the work was so tiring, the work of performing this feminine high-pitched voice, it was so tiring and exhausting that she stopped doing it. And also she had the opportunity to live in a society where the understanding of feminine speech was kind of more open or flexible or negotiable. Yeah, next. So what about about speech speech therapy or speech training or voice training? So that's something that I found in a bunch of literature in US scholarship, studies on transgender people in sociolinguistics and in communication. But that is not very much the case in Spanish or in Spanish society. It's not like a strong trend of, speech therapists working with people to get rid of their accents, like in the US society. So I'm going to bring two examples of how different is Peruvian society than American society in this regard. Can you? So, okay. Let's play. Let's cross our fingers. Okay. Let's hear this.
Hi, this is a video on how to find your female voice. It's written primarily for male to female transsexuals who are interested in the option of stealth, but I think that it can have use for all sorts of other people in the gender community. So I'm offering this up as a little step-by-step instruction, and I'm excited that you're going to try this with me. I think that you may learn something.
So, did you watch the movie, the 2004 movie Transamerica? Did you? So the very first scene, there is Bree, which is the main character. She's watching this video because she bought this VHS, okay, or DVD, I don't know. So Bree is a transgender woman starting her transition, and she started to practice with this very same video. So this is kind of a very famous speech therapist in the internet. And there are tons of video about how to modulate your voice in a feminine way in internet, mostly in English. But when you try to find that in Spanish, it's very difficult. The first thing that I learned doing fieldwork is that, not the first thing, but I realized that there is no linguist working with this kind of, interest in Peru. And to the right, you can see the poster of a documentary called Duosangue. I know this is another aspect of, LGBT linguistic behavior, but it also has to do, with in part of the documentary, there were interviews to people to speech therapists to help gay men to get rid of their gay accent. So if we think about gay accent, we think about lisping, right? So to get rid of the lisping or to some more straight sounding, right? So nothing of this happened in Peru. I don't know the reasons. I have to explore that. It's very unlikely to find that even in Spanish-speaking societies, and I don't know exactly why, because there is a lot of money, behind these companies and these, activities. Yeah. So the next piece. So music is eerie, right? Like, it's like X-Files or like. Okay, so this is the amazing person who helped me to meet feminists. Her name is Javiera Arnillas. So Javiera is she's a model, an actress, and also an outspoken activist of transgender rights. She's a transgender Afro-Peruvian woman. So this happened some days ago. She uploaded a video about her feminization of voice surgery. And I was very impressed because I didn't know, I mean, in the circle of friends I have, among my participants, nobody told me about, getting surgery for their vocal cords. And it's the first time I heard something about this, besides an American friend, half Peruvian, half American, who's going to get surgery for her vocal cords in some months, but that will happen in Manhattan, not in Barranquilla, Colombia. So I'm bringing this example. Again, this is public, so I'm not like betraying anybody's confidence. I bring this example for you to see how all the steps that the woman who wants to change their pitch has to go into transgender travel to another country, paid lots of money to get surgery, etc. Is very it's very interesting how it's not an actual resource for transgender women in Lima, in general in Peru. Okay, next. So that was an interlude. Let's go back to the linguistics, to the data. Okay, so women don't course. I think that's one of the most most pervasive gender norms when being raised as a girl. Next, please. And these appear when talking about linguistic practice of the supposed or the assumed linguistic practice of women. So she's 26. Yeah, as many other respondents, her gender trajectory before transitioning the gender to the feminine gender was being a feminine acting gay guy. Okay, so that happened many times. People perform a gay identity and then they realize to come into terms with the feminine identity and transition to femininity. When I asked her, So sometimes I have to change the wording because I wanted to tell me, I want them to tell me more, you know, like, because I was so tired the moment that pitch, intonation, tone, and they were like, okay, one more. So I had to like put some extra out there. So what about choosing certain words or something that I changed consciously, words that you don't say, and we reply. Can you change to the next one? So I will get you all confused with my Spanish. Coursing. My mother forbade it since she told me, if you want something in life, you must work for it. ¿Cómo es? Celeste que le cueste.
Si quieres celeste que te cueste.
Si quieres celeste que te cueste, which is basically, if you want something in life, you have to work for it. If you are going to be a woman, you're going to behave like a woman. Forget coursing, forget tackiness, forget about being scandalosa. It was like I had that permission of saying, you know, of coursing, she said, before when I was a gay man, I could course. Carajo. Okay. Things like that. Of course, now once in a while I said things like that, but no super strong coursing words. I won't say like that much strong words coursing as I was before transitioning. Okay, so this is very interesting because it's like the mother helping her in their gender in the new second society, in the second linguistic socialization, like, you know, planting the norm of women don't course, you know. And I don't know how to think about that because many stories parents don't help or even despise their own children if they're, you know, share their transgender. So in this case, mother was very helpful, but in that, you know, being a guidance towards femininity for her daughter, also, you know, it was a pack of gender norms too. So yeah. And also we can compare how their linguistics behavior was before being her respective linguistic behavior as a gay man was quite different and more flexible, maybe, than being a straight woman, trans woman. Next, please. Okay, so this happens very few times. As I said, is related with this feature that Robin Lake mentioned, that hypercorrect grammar. And this is a language ideology of believing that women are more aware about the correct ways to talk. Yeah. So next, please. So the posh-educated speech. And I end the naming. And F. One more. What is that? Okay. So so this person, this is a very special participant. She's, well, yeah, 65. She started transitioning like 5 years ago, before the interview. For the case, as again, it's like overlapping two socializations when one is transgender. But for the first linguistic socialization or gender socialization, if it takes a long time of the lifespan, it will get more difficult to rearrange or to renegotiate that. So transitioning as a middle-aged person, it could be a bit more challenging for some persons. For older people, older speakers than young. But this is very interesting also because she kind of includes the social class aspect and educational aspect too. So yeah, the same question. Can you change it, please? So let's go to she said, maybe Ada, can you help me?
Oh, you want me to read it?
Yeah, the F.
Okay, I'll take this opportunity to say we're running out of time, just so we can finish up. I don't think I changed a lot of expressions in my speech because Well, the only thing that I may have changed is the gender, right? But my vocabulary has always been very, I don't want to sound braggy, but sometimes a little bit very polished, right? Sometimes I've been told that even with my appearance before, much before, I was told I was very learned, that I used to search for words, right? And I say, well, that's how I am. I mean, I'm not searching for words, but well, and I like it. I like to have a quiet conversation. I don't like to get crazy. I like to think about the words sometimes, look for the words. Sometimes I'm going to say a word and I say, no, I'm not going to use that word. I'm going to use this other one. I look for synonyms, something softer.
So she makes the link between, having a posh speech with being feminine. This is a person who belongs to the middle class, educated middle class of Lima, who work as CEO, like a high rank in the bank. So she's saying this is a very interesting. We're running out of time, right? What? We were running out of time?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So next, we want to just the most interesting next. I felt like, okay, maybe I won't reach there. Now we're talking about now. Next, please. So yeah, basically this is the next. So many of them said like, well, I didn't have to change anything because my voice was like this all my life. Okay, so actually I had to pretend to be a man or a boy when I was younger before transitioning. So that was faking. So this contestant said, this respondent said, next one. I prefer to read the translation. I don't want to. I tried to externalize my feminine voice, my head voice, but I always shaping my voice at school. At school, they bother me a lot because I talk like I do now, right? And they laugh at me. They detect that I was not, well, a normal boy. So I had to force my voice to make it sound masculine. So when I started my transition, I stopped forcing it. Just me, nothing else. The way I am. Next, please. So this is very interesting because it talks about, gender identity or presentation before transitioning. Like there is a continuity in the, presentation of speech. Here she's saying another age, she's younger, she's also young. Since I was little, well, I remember at the time when I was 18, around years old, I tried to talk like a man, right? With all the words that men use, like bro. She actually said bro in Spanish. Things like that, right? But even cursing is more allowed for men than women. So again, it's like her gender transition where she put a lot of effort to trying to pass as a man rather than, let it go, with the actual voice. For me, it's difficult to talk about actual and natural in this term because voice quality is in the middle way of socialization and, physical attributes. So next. Okay, yeah. Okay, 5 more minutes, please. Yeah. So the straight male listening subject, I invent this because the original concept is the listening subject, right? Like that's something that Miyako Inoue, proposed as a concept to understand why so many male scholars or male intellectuals in Japan, they were so afraid about the disappearance of women's language in Japanese. And also was kind of adapted by Rosa Flores in the racial linguistics framework. They're talking about, the white listening subject when, talking about racism among racialized subjects, not necessarily bilinguals or by dialectals. But I tried this to bring this idea of the straight male listening subject because heterosexuality plays an important role in the in the modulation of voices, and so we can see in this in the moment. This is like 3 times my PhD defense, Okay, so she's saying like, next please. For example, this happened out of the blue. She started talking to me about this, I mean, by her own. I didn't ask her about, heterosexual men, think on you, blah, blah, blah. For example, it happened to me that, for example, when I talk to a man, I don't know why my voice changes. It becomes concha, which is a word for shell, which is a very unsophisticated word, talk about female genital. So concha has like an indexical word behind about being like very feminine, I don't know why my voice changes, it becomes concha, blah, blah, blah. But when I'm with the tracas, and this is a derogatory way to talk about transgender women, oh no, my voice is like another, like a cabrazo, which is a derogatory way to talk about gay men. So everything is kind of conflated here, but she's basically saying when in front of a man, I became more, my voice started to sound more feminine. I want to sound feminine, but when I'm with another trans girls, I started like being more mysterious or more, one of the girls, I know. I said, yes, I know. I can hear, I remember talking, cabrazo, cabrazo, which is for gay. It's like saying the F word for gay men. I won't say that. I don't know why when I'm with a man, my voice changes, but when I'm with a man, my voice changes. Oh, but when I'm a maricona with a cabro, so this is I'm an F with a F. Oh no, it's only another F word. So this is very interesting because she's trying to modulate her voice in the perspective of a relation with a straight man. And the next one is a bit, next please. I just want to highlight that here, this speaker talk about, how to model themselves or gender representation to get to empathize with straight men. Yeah. How does one have to argue for a heterosexual man? Of course, a heterosexual man will already block you. I mean, he will realize that you are a transgender woman. Whether you want to or not, he will have to tell you she is trans or no, you are a man. Because the heterosexual man will make you see it. I mean, he will make you feel. So in this case, it's no more the accommodation of their speech is not very much guided by desire, but for the fear of violence. That's my interpretation. That's preliminary interpretation. So again, the straight male listen such. Okay, so this is the last. No, we can pass this. Next. Next. So this is part of the abstract, so that's why I have to talk about this. This is part of the abstract, so I don't want to miss this part. So next, please. There is a certain, awareness about there is a way that gay men talk in Peruvian in society in Lima. So there is a practice between gay men in different languages and cultures, which is called inverted appellation, and it's basically to refer to another gay man with the feminine forms. Being, putting a feminine article before his name, like La Ernesto or La Ricardo, or using feminine personal pronouns, ella, she, or using, kind of equivalent feminine forms of the name of the, the address. Okay, so how that works. Okay, so this is a kind of important paper about the subject, and I bring the concept from that. Next. So the former respondent who said about, I sound more trans with a trans girl, but with a straight guy, I sound very feminine, very concha. She's saying like, next please. She's saying like, she doesn't like to spend too much time with gay guys because she's like going backwards. Because when I hang out with gays, I feel like I'm going backwards a little bit. So, and before that, she's saying because mujerean mucho, they use mucho mujereo. Tell me a little bit about mujereo, I asked her. Oh, for example, La Carlos is coming. So basically it's inverted appellation. Or here she comes, look at her. I feel that sometimes, I mean, to date, when I see two gays mujeriando together, I find it horrible, even if I want to hit them. But why? I don't know. I said, but what are you mujeriando? What are you using inverted appellation if they are two men? I mean, do they want to ridicule the woman or do they want to ridicule the trans woman? No. So it's very interesting how, gay men using in a way, and for other person in the LGBT community, the same practice is considered offensive. So yeah, she's marking some distance from gay men's speech and gay men's practices, and also from part of her past, because she used to hang out with gay guys. She herself presented as a gay man some years before. Okay, so I'm coming to the end of this presentation. Thank you so much. Gracias. I'm open to your questions and comments and recommendations. Thank you.
Yeah, so anyone in the room, feel free to ask a question. I'll be monitoring the chat. And I guess if you want to ask your question out loud over Zoom, that should be fine too.
Maybe you could talk a little bit about that anecdote you and I were talking about the other day, which was at the party.
Okay, I'm part of the LGBT community. I'm the G in the LGBT, and they are part of the G in the LGBT. So but there are spaces between the letters, so I was invited as part of Feminas, because I'm a friend of Feminas, to a queer party in Lince, middle class neighborhood in Lima. I live like 5 blocks away of that. I was like, okay, that's for free. Okay, that's an invitation. Let's go. And I hung out with the girls, feminist and gender girls. And it was cool because there was, people bowling, and there were people, there were some people doing drag, lesbians, gay couples, and it was like, okay, this is cool. Girls are starting to get bored. Like, oh, I don't know, nothing's going on here. This is boring. I was like, why? But nothing is going to happen for us here. Oh, nobody wanna take us to dance, etc. Okay, I was like, okay, if you want to change plans, let's change plans. And we went to a salsa place 1 block away. Just another whole universe 1 block away. It was completely crowded. Only salsa with an orchestra, live orchestra, right? Men pursuing women to dance with them, and straight people everywhere. One of the girls said, "Oh, or finally heterosexuality," and I was like, "Okay." And actually, I didn't tell this to Cici, but it was my first impression there was very kind of violent, because when I entered, I kind of ran into somebody. I thought it was the waiter, and he was like, he felt I was frightening, because he tried to basically defend his woman because I was too close to his girlfriend, and they were like, wow, okay, nothing like that will happen. I'm sorry. And he was very like, what do you want? What do you get out of here? And I was like, okay, why I'm here? And of course I got bored. Yeah. And it was very loud. But the orchestra was cool. Only 1 woman. So that proved that, we belong to, gender minorities, but, our sexual orientations are quite different.
We have someone raise their hand over Zoom. So Julian, if you want to speak.
Oh, Julian.
Hi, hello everyone. First of all, congratulations, Ernesto. Muchas
Julian.
felicidades. I'm very happy to
Yeah, I think he's talking about. we don't have
Can you listen to me?
I'm very happy. Thank you talking about.
You can listen to me?
We cannot hear you, Julian.
Oh,
Can
I
you
think-
type the question, please?
Oh, okay.
Okay. Julian is a friend of mine from Mexico. We met in the Indisciplinares Circle of Feminine Linguistics. He worked his BA dissertation on trans men, linguistic practice of trans men, the use of pronouns, I think, in Spanish of this community. Oh, okay. I think it's very, I mean, first of all, that word concha is, I don't imagine a cisgender woman using it very much. I don't see the motivation why a gay guy would say concha, because it's, I think it's very trans specific for the female transgender community. There are other words, of course, are related with sex life, lifestyles. Many of them are related of this idea of passing, right? So concha is a way to validate other people, that other girls or women that they are passing. It has to do with, oh, tú te ves muy concha, you look very concha. That is, that you look like a cisgender woman, like you pass as. And this is another phrase that is not slang, but is a very common phrase in these spaces, which you eres mujer de nacimiento, you are a born woman, and you look like a cisgender woman. But yeah, so I think there is a lot of indexical work between, the idea of female genitalia as a proof of how authentic and passing is the presentation of certain groups, right? Yeah, it's for trans femme people, definitely. What other words?
Go ahead.
Maybe would you like to say more about this kind of different uses of mujereo or inverted? What was the term again?
Inverted appellation.
Inverted appellation. It sounded like for one of the people you were talking with, it was like to see gay cisgender men do that was as if they were mocking the use of pronoun, almost as if it was like so it's kind of, because for the gay cisgender community, I guess it's more like a playful sense of community, right? That then you create this other, for this other group, it's more like, oh, you're oppressing us by doing that.
Yeah, this is a different understanding of the very same practice. This is not the only instance that I heard somebody in the group complaining about the use of feminine forms by gay men. I remember people saying, one of the girls saying, why gay men are using that? They are not women. What they are pretending to do? And I was like, inverted appellation. But I was quiet, but it's inverted. Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily common on understanding, but I think there is like gray areas here, because some, at least the last a generation ago, some trans women did even in like small rural communities in Peru, where they are transgender women, they call themselves with their, some I heard stories about people referring themselves and to other trans women in a non-offensive way with, the masculine sounding name, preceded by the feminine article, la Ernesto. So there is not a word for feminizing or adopting a feminine name. So that is a common practice in some places. So that it could be also considered, inverted appellation. So it's much more complex than that. Yeah, so the space of feminas, the market of feminas, digital feminas, it's very unlikely that other people who are not trans women to be there. So I couldn't see or be witness of this clash of interpretation, right? Yeah. But also in the gay community, gay men despise some gay men who use this, that, right?
Yeah. Is it possible that for the trans women who objected to this mujereo, that they were concerned about their own use of language, using feminine terms because they're women? Were they concerned about people misinterpreting that as them being gay men using mujereo? Is that possible?
Like people.
So like they're trans women saying, they're trans women using feminine forms, but is it possible they're worried about other people seeing them as gay men using mujereo? Is that a possible concern?
I don't think so. Yeah, I mean, it is a set of stylistic features, right? Like it's not the only how you talk, but also how you walk and how you dress. So that may be a concern for women who hasn't transitioned yet, like using, skinny jeans, some makeup, not like presenting themselves fully 24/7 as a woman. It's like a middle, and I know stories, people I don't want to say like in the middle, but in the beginning of the transition, presenting for the world like a feminine gay guy, most than a straight trans woman. Right? So, but no, I don't think that. But I know that there are some, as the case of she said, like, I don't want to spend time with gay guys because they use these forms. And also I heard, I recall trans girls saying, like, I don't want to spend time with other trans girls because people will think I'm trans and I don't want that. So, and yeah, one of the hypotheses of one of my informants is that the very practice of this trans language or the trans slang of the community is dying out because these younger generations are wanting to more present themselves as trying to pass, they don't want to be marked as part of a sexual minority.
But even the use of the word pass implies that what they're trying to do is somehow something they're not entitled to, which I don't know, that seems like that's judgmental in a sense.
Yeah, I think here the best translation is pass. I just realized that in this very moment. Yeah, so I have these conflicting thoughts when reading Think Here, because it's like losing face by their own. Like I have to fake my voice, so there is an understanding of the original and the copy, right? So that's the ideological background there. So yeah, that's my is kind of problematic for me in the interviews when they use the word being here or in post. Yeah, but I share the same awkward feeling too.
My last question.
Well,
Yeah, I just one, yeah. So it seems like you're suggesting that there might be some new identity that's emerging among the most conscious, politically conscious members of this community, such that it's okay to be,
yeah,
to not pass. It's okay just to be yourself. It's okay
Yeah.
to talk naturally, however naturally, however it comes to you. And that might be an interesting development in terms of how this community evolves
Yeah.
over time.
yeah, that's one of the slides I skipped, but you can like put it again. It's quite difficult. No, I'm sure. No, don't matter. Don't bother. Yeah, so one of the slides I put like, it was titled Challenging Heteronormativity, and it was one of, these participants talk about, at the beginning I was very aware and also afraid about, sounding more feminine, but then I like open up to more like, to the diversity of being, of femininity, of female identities. So yeah, there is hints of that in some of the interviews, like more openness, like they bring examples of, there are cisgender women who have very strong voices with low pitch. So what are we pretending, but they are very politicized, yeah. And they are like, very, very activist. But there is an element of that also.
I mean, the ultimate challenge to the binary is not adhering to the binary by just becoming a very straight-looking woman, attractive past, and some sort of super feminine type of woman. It's the whole plethora of identities that one can possibly inhabit along a giant spectrum.
Yeah.
So there has been work on that with regard to language for female transgender people, that all the guidance. Now, you made the distinction between what happens in the US with voice as opposed to Peru, but all the advice being given to them is very much towards a stereotypical female, that the range that you just mentioned is not the devices. You've got to sound, you're going to do this, you have to sound very feminine in a very traditional way.
And that's actually what happened with the publication of Language and Women's Place of Lakoff, that it was used by speech therapists for transgender women. And like, okay, this has the formula, okay, ages, polite form, hypercorrect grammar. So basically that.
Can I just ask, in your dissertation, you're planning to, because it sounds like in the context of feminists, you found different takes on how they identify through language.
Yeah.
Maybe based in age, generation.
Yeah.
So how are you planning to like analyze this information, like through groups, like, like age-wise, generation-wise, class?
That's a long conversation I have to, I have to have with Cici Cutler, my advisor, who's standing here. Thank you so much. But so the thing with Feminist and the community center is not like a typical community, in the sense that people are not like, they don't belong to the same neighborhood, they don't share a household. So it's kind of a club for socialization, but also a place for resources. So that is why there are so many, profiles, so different profiles, people, dedicated to sex work, people like having working for big companies or with a high level of education or having other, problems with basic literacy skills. So I think that is one of the most challenging part of my writing process. I don't know how to deal with this diversity. I don't.
Um, so I don't know anything about race in Peru, really. But is there any possibility that the image of femininity that they're pursuing is some sort of racialized femininity, like a white femininity or something? Is that possible?
Yeah, definitely. One of my respondents, she's an Afro-Peruvian woman, and she was like, I can be very loudy because I'm black, so I can do that. And I was very politically incorrect to say that, but if you say that about yourself, okay. So there is an access of, there is a line of racialized language ideology behind, that I need to explore. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, one last question. That's
I can imagine there are aspects of, I guess I don't know if I'm gonna call it woke language is performed the same in Peru as it is here, but I feel like there are aspects of woke language that might conflict with the way they talk about passing or moving from one binary to another. But they also seem to be in these transcriptions quite politically aware, politically correct. So I'm wondering how they navigate maybe some of that language that might conflict.
Yeah, so when you're talking about woke language, you talk about people like being aware about social injustice and social movement.
Yes, but whole lexicon attached to it.
Yeah. So okay. So I have two set of data. One is the interviews that I just mentioned, and the other is Facebook page of Femina. So in the Facebook page, I'm more likely to find this woke language, like this public facing discourses, rather than when talking individually to my participants. So these woke language or woke discourses are very much the exception in the interviews rather than the norm. So, but I need to analyze the other set of data to see. So for instance, a thing that I found, I start finding is that the word travesti, which is a very problematic word for many trans women, is not very much mobilized in the Facebook of Feminas as, I don't know, another trans agrupations in Argentina, for instance, where people are much more, they use it a lot in the titles of the organizations, etc. So, that has to do with what kind of, the way they want to be, referred to. But yeah, that is a different type of data. And I didn't expect to get to hear a human rights discourse in the interviews, but that happened a few times, but that happened.
Okay, let's give Ernesto another round of applause. Very much for a wonderful talk. I will stop recording now, and for the